when you begin to load more energy into the system and you don't let that energy go back out, you begin to create imbalance, dis-ease. It's a transformation of how things work. You begin to destabilize the stable climate that we have all grown accustomed to. One thing that you walk away from this talk remembering, remember this, okay? So, how do we know what the concentration of CO2, remember carbon dioxide is the principal greenhouse gas. When we burn oil, we burn coal, you burn wood, you burn anything, you release carbon dioxide. You breathe, you release carbon dioxide. When there's enough trees and plants, the trees absorb that, and that's a balance. When the system is in balance, we as animals breathe out carbon dioxide, the plants breathe it in, and they fix it into the plant, the stems and the roots and all the other kind of things. But how do we know what the concentration was back, say, 50,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago? Well, the way we do that is you go down to these big glaciers in Antarctica and you drill core samples. And so this is a picture of scientists drilling an ice core sample. All right? And as you go deeper into that glacier, it is like you're going in a time machine, going back in time, because as you go further and further down, when that ice was formed, it captured little bubbles of oxygen, nitrogen, the components of the atmosphere. So the further you go, the deeper you go, you can actually tell the further in time you go back. All right? So scientists, for the last few decades, have been taking these ice cores. Now this is a complicated slide, but just hang with me, okay? It's not really as complicated as it looks. All right? So across the bottom is time. 0 is the present. We're going back. This number here is 800,000 years ago. All right? So today, 800,000 years back in time. The vertical axis is the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere for the last 800,000 years, basically. And it goes from roughly 180 parts per million, which is a unit of volume. So for every million molecules of oxygen, of atmosphere, this tells you how many in that parts per million volume is a molecule of CO2. All right? And so roughly what it says is 180 going up to about 300. That's the numbers here. The bottom number is 180, the top is 300. So this is CO2 concentrating in the atmosphere. So let me try to help you think about 800,000 years. Because when I hear 800,000 years, I'm like, oh, what does that mean? I mean, it gives me a headache. I don't even know what it means, okay? So today is 0. When did Columbus sail the ocean blue?
14.
So how many years ago was that, roughly? Roughly 500 years ago. When, if you're a Christian and you believe, when did Jesus walk on the face of the earth?
2,000 years ago.
Roughly 2,000 years ago. Okay, remember the first tick here is 100,000 years ago. Okay, so we said Columbus, Jesus. When were the pyramids built? 5 or 10,000 years ago, roughly. Some 6,000 years ago. Is that what somebody said? Okay, so we're still way down here, right? All right. When was the first human remains found of Homo sapiens in Africa? Anybody know that off the top of their head? Huh?
250, I guess. Lucy?
Yeah, about 250,000 years ago, somewhere. So somewhere in this area, was where humans sort of, as we are now, Homo sapiens sort of. So you're in this area, okay? All right? So that means, think about this. All of recorded human history is way down here, right? Humans, sort of really as we know them, is in the first quarter or so of this chart. And I'm taking you back 800,000 years. All right? Hang with me. Now, look at this. These are the concentrations. And you see the swings. All right? The swings are by a whole bunch of different reasons. But, we go in and out of ice ages and other things like that through time. This is the temperature that is anticipated to have been during those times. one of the things that you'll notice from these two graphs, and you don't have to pay attention to the details necessarily, but they kind of look like they overlap each other quite well, right? All right? Because there is a strong correlation between the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere and the temperatures that we experience on the planet. That's a proven fact, not debated at all in science anymore, much at all. This is basically the way it goes. All right. So I said, for 800,000 years, the bandwidth of what the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere has roughly been from 180 to slightly below 300 parts per million. And we've had swings in and out of ice ages over this time and other things like that. But largely that bandwidth has not changed. Who knows what the concentration is today of CO2 in the atmosphere? All right. Last year, 2008, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere in the world was 387 parts per million. All right? That is a fact. All right? I don't care what party you belong to. I don't care whether you believe in global warming or not. This is an absolute fact. The concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is way out from where it has ever been for all the human recorded history. All right? If that one fact alone doesn't wake you up to the seriousness of this, because what this means is, folks, we are waging a grand experiment on the planet that we have no idea what's going to happen. All right? Now, where are we going? Business as usual, folks, if we don't change the way we're doing it. Now, this says that we'll get to 600 parts per million after 35 years. If we don't put a price on carbon, then that means that that number I showed you is just going to keep going up. If you put a price on carbon, what you can do is you can start to change the way we're going forward. Now let me explain it this way. This graph is between basically 1970. Here we are right now, about 2010. This is 2050. A lot of people feel that if we don't get this problem solved in the next 20 years, 15 years, we're in real trouble. And so think of it like this. Business as usual, and this is what this is, in emissions show that we're going to go from emitting, and this is the tons of, this is gigatons, so that's a very large unit of carbon. But we're going to go from 1.8 gigatons up to 2.6 gigatons of carbon over that time period. So that's the top. Think of it like an alligator's jaw. We're going up like this. All right? What we need to do is we need to close that alligator's jaw, because what we need to do is we need to bring down the amount of carbon we're putting in the atmosphere. So if we close the jaw, how are we going to do that? All right? Well, energy efficiency. This is based on a theory called the wedges theory, where we're getting basically a lot better gas mileage in cars, and we've got just being more efficient. In other words, squeeze more work out of each gallon, squeeze more work out of each kilowatt hour. Look, we're starting to level it off. That's a good thing, right? We're just basically getting rid of waste. Other transportation efficiency. What if we start doing, light rail? What if we start doing high-speed trains? What if we start doing other things where we get, we get airplanes where they actually fly more efficient routes? Blah, 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 blah. You can go on and on and on and on. Look, now we're actually starting to take that alligator's jaw where we're coming down some. And so, you can get hybrid cars, they're now talking about electric cars. You got to be smart about electric cars. You don't want to plug an electric car into a coal plant. I mean, it's actually, in honesty, it is a little bit better for the environment, but it still doesn't solve the problem, right? So, we've got to figure out how we do that, but, we are making some advances. Now look at this, renewable energy. If we basically were to start really aggressively pursuing renewable energy, look at this now. We're starting to come, that jaw of that alligator's coming down. We're solving this problem, right? That's what we need to be doing. And so, whether it be wind turbines or solar panels or whatever it is, these are things that we can actually do.